He's appearing this Tuesday night at Shea Center for Performing Arts on the campus of William Paterson University. His music has been a huge part of my show here on WDHA. Roger McGuinn, welcome to All Mixed Up. It's great having you here.
Thank you. I feel all mixed up.
I
It's
want to
kind of
talk
like
to you about your role, and I don't know if firsts is the right way to do it, but you're among the first folk rock bands. You are among the first rock act to be signed to Columbia Records. You're the first rock band to appear on the Grand Ole Opry, which was really groundbreaking at the time. How much of that do you think was, well, let's do something different here versus just the natural evolution of things?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. When the Beatles came out, and I'd been a folk musician, I went, wow, they're using folk music chords in their rock and roll, and it gave me the idea to do that. And we met Jim Dixon, and he knew Bob Dylan, he knew Mr. Tambourine Man, and Mr. Tambourine Man was in a 2/4 folky time, and it was 4 minutes and 30 seconds long. Radio wouldn't touch it, so I had to cut it down for time and change the time signature from 2/4 to 4/4 and like a Beatle beat, which interestingly enough, I found out recently when Hal Blaine passed away, what I thought was a Beatle beat was a Phil Spector thing. I think it was like one of those Ronettes records that
Hmm.
Phil was playing on, and he dropped a stick and he couldn't play the fourth, so he played boom, boom, boom. And he said musicians, when they make a mistake, they do it again. So you think they meant to do it on purpose. And so he kept doing boom, boom, boom. And then it became kind of like the instrumental break of the record. Everything quieted down and you just heard the drums going boom, boom, boom. And that caught on like wildfire. The Beatles picked it up. And I thought they'd invented it, but no, it was on a Phil Spector record of some kind. Anyway, I like that beat, and I'd been into rock and roll before I was into folk. I'd been in Elvis and Gene Vincent, Carl Perkins, and Everly Brothers and Johnny Cash, and I loved that stuff. So it was no big deal. Besides, I was never a real folk singer. I was always just an instrumentalist behind folk groups. So I wasn't betraying anything, and nobody really cared like they did when Dylan did it. Going electric, it was no big deal for me to go electric. Nobody cared. So it was an easy transition from folk musician to rock and roll folk musician.
Where did your guitar playing style come from?
Well, it's a combination of things. I went to the Old Town School of Folk Music and I studied five-string banjo and a lot of those rolling finger picking things. I translated over. Oh, somebody's giving me a text. Anyway, I translated that over to the electric 12-string, the Rickenbacker, and I did a lot of arpeggio stuff. And it came from my banjo work.
I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Rickenbacker, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about was guitars. I believe you have three with you on tour right now: a Martin 12 string, a Martin 7 string, and
Yeah.
then a Rickenbacker 12. Let me start with you, Roger, on the Martin 7 string, which I've seen you play. I've heard it, I understand it, but I can't get over how much it sounds more like a 12 string than a 7
Well,
string.
Well, that's the whole idea. We took the Concorde back when it was flying, and they promised to treat our luggage with kid gloves. Well, they broke my 12-string my 12-string Martin on the way back. It's about a $5,000 guitar. They gave me $200 for it, or three, something like that. So I thought, man, I would like to not carry a six-string and a 12-string. What if I could combine the two into one guitar that would kind of do everything? And I went to Dick Boak at Martin and told him my idea, and we sat down at lunch with a paper napkin and drew out the specs, and he took it to Martin. And first they didn't want to do it because they'd have to retool the headstock and everything. And they thought, man, this is too much trouble. But he talked them into it, and they did it, and it came out great. And it's the one I play the most, and it does have that 12-string ring to it on the double G. It's got an octave on the G strings, and I play leads up and down that sometimes. I got that idea from George Harrison, who did that because it's much more dynamic than playing the B string or the E string to get high notes. So, it's really a great guitar for doing acoustic stuff.
And
And I do
there is,
carry,
I'm sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
I do carry a five-string banjo with me too.
There is no acoustic guitar quite like a Martin. The sound is unlike any other. Guild and Takamine and Taylor, they all make wonderful instruments. But Roger, and I think you might agree with me on this, the Martin, there's just something special about it.
Yeah, I met Bob Taylor once at a NAMM show, and I told him I played the 12 string. He said, "Oh, Leo Kottke plays the 12 string."
You mentioned the Beatles before, and you had seen George Harrison with a 12 string, and that was kind of what inspired you to get one. And I should point out, if I can get this here,
Oh, you got one. You got one. It's
I
a
got a
360.
Rickenbacker 360 12 because I
Oh,
saw you play one so many times, and I thought this guitar just is
I
so
know.
beautiful.
It is beautiful. You got it with the toaster pickups too. Oh, no, no, those are the humbuckers, right? Yeah.
Yo, those are the humbuckers. But the Rickenbacker that you're playing now is a special edition. Tell us about that guitar.
Well, John Hall at Rickenbacker proposed that they do a signature model back in 19, I guess, 80 something. I'm not sure, 89, 87, around there. And so they printed up a thousand. They made 1,000 of them and sold them all. And at first, here's an interesting anecdote. At first, it had a picture of little rectangular glasses on the pick guard. And Tom Petty saw it. He said, "No, man, that's too cartoonish. You got to do something more dignified, like your signature or something." So I did. And so Tom saved me from that cartoon thing. But they sold them all. And half of them have an electronic circuit that sounds like it's a compressor, and it's got treble and bass, and it's got six different settings in it, and you can use it at home. But if you try to use it on stage, the lighting, the RF from the lighting gets into it and makes a buzz. So I can't use it on stage. But it's a great sounding instrument in the studio. You can use it in the studio. In fact, when I did that um, Back from Rio album, I used it in the studio, and it sounds really long, sustained, like a wind instrument almost.
One of the things that you've done is on your website is Folk Den. Tell our listeners about that because it's a really cool project.
Back in 1995, I was listening to a Smithsonian Folkways album of traditional songs, and it dawned on me that, Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan were writing their own songs. They weren't doing the child ballads, and the Henry Martin, and they even, if you don't, if you look at Don't Look Back, Bobby Newirth is criticizing Joan Baez for still doing Henry Martin, traditional music. And so it was just out of vogue to do traditional music. Also, there's more money in writing your own for publishing. So there were double incentive to not do the traditional side of folk music. I thought, what's going to happen when Pete Seeger, Odetta, all these people die, and they have now. And I was always into gadgets and computers. I had early computers in the 80s, and I knew how to put songs on the computer and put them up on the internet for free download. And I thought, what a great way to spread them out and get them to people for free. And I started doing that in November of 1995. It's coming up on the 30th anniversary in November. And there are over 350 free MP3s at McGuinn.com in the Folk Den section, a public service sponsored by UNC in Chapel Hill.
I like the way you break down some of the categories. And one that caught my eye was jazzgrass, and that was
Yes.
the traditional Little Maggie with a
Okay.
Rickenbacker 12 string solo in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just try to mix and match, mix things up, all mixed up,
There
like
you
a mixed
go.
bag, like a mixed bag.
There you go. Very, very astute on that part. I think about the way that music has evolved, and we talk about, and you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we just had the latest announcement of who's been inducted, and you always get that, well, that person's not rock and roll, or this person should be in, and why isn't that person, and why is this one? And you go back and forth, and I think part of the problem, Roger, is that we really cannot identify exactly what is and what isn't rock and roll.
Yeah. Well, rock and roll basically is R&B. It's a blues-based thing. And then we went into more kind of elaborate, I'd say almost Baroque style of playing, and that's rock and roll too, but that's more of a soft rock, like more like what the Byrds did, is more Baroque than blues based. And I just like that. I listen to Sunday Baroque on NPR every Sunday. It's great.
I go back, watch a lot of old Westerns, and every so often one will have Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys on it. And I listen to them and go, that rocks. That's rock and roll right there, long before we even heard that term.
Mhm. Well, things converge, I mean, because we're in America, we have exposure to the blues and to R&B, and all these things kind of blend together. Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys were an inspiration to Willie Nelson. Yeah.
Most definitely. Most
Mm.
definitely. I read somewhere that you've been reading Mike Campbell's book. I don't know if you've finished it yet or not, but what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I finished it. I think it's great. It brought back so many personal memories because I was with him on a lot of that stuff, and it brought back my friendship with Tom and the gigs we did, and Bob Dylan, and the tour we did in Europe, the Temples and Flames tour, where we had like 500,000 people in East Germany for a concert. That wow, it's just amazing. And I just put up a video of me doing Mr. Tambourine Man with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers in East Berlin in 1987, and you can find it on. I think it's called East Berlin. The title of the video.
You mentioned Pete Seeger a little while ago, and I know that he was such an influence on you, and he figures prominently in the new Bob Dylan pick that I saw recently and absolutely loved. When I think of Pete Seeger, I think of the storytelling, and you're bringing that into your. I mean, it's always been a part of your act, but you're really emphasizing that these days.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, it wasn't always part of my act. I used to say thank you very much and tell what the title of the next song was. And I was playing with John Prine in Texas, and the review came out the next day and said, unless you're really a big fan of Roger McGuinn's, it was pretty boring. And I said, well, that's a valid criticism because I didn't talk, and John was such a magnificent storyteller. So my wife and I started writing things to say on stage, and we came up with stories. And gradually, we have a lot of stories that go with the songs, and I do them. And so what I'm doing now is stories and songs, and it's kind of a one-man show. It's scripted and rehearsed.
You had the opportunity to perform at the Kennedy Center in honor of Pete Seeger. What was that like?
It was a thrill. Got to talk to Pete and hang out with him, and I sang "Turn, Turn, Turn" to him, and then the camera went up to him singing along with it, and oh, it's just such a sweet moment. It was just a beautiful time.
Moments like that, and then with what we were talking about with the folk den, is so important to help keep different styles of music alive. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Mark Tremonti and what he's done with Frank Sinatra's music. I took my father-in-law to see Tremonti here in New Jersey do his Sinatra show, and I kept saying to him, "You're gonna love it." Well, who is he? I said, "Well, he's a heavy metal guitar player, and I'm gonna
Oh.
like this." I said, "You're gonna love it." Because and one point in the show, Roger, Mark said, and he's like note for note with the arrangements and what have you, and he said, we have to do everything in our power to keep this music alive. And as I go through your folk den material on your website, that's the overwhelming thought that I have, helping to keep this music alive.
That's my hope. And I know it's not really as popular as it could be. And I think it could have something to do with what do they call that price? Some kind of pricing, like Apple put their prices up really high. So it looks like a very high quality product. And if it's free, you go, well, but someday somebody's going to open the box and discover it and go, wow, look what this guy did.
Tuesday night at the Shea Center for Performing Arts at William Paterson University. Roger McGuinn performing live. What can our listeners expect when they go to the show?
Well, it's a one-man show. As I mentioned before, it's we rehearse it, and it's got stories and songs, and we try to change it up from time to time. Where if we've done the same thing before, we'll do something different. And I love doing it, and the audiences love it. And Camilla sells merchandise out front, and she always asks the audience what they thought of it, and or what they liked the best. And they said, "Oh, the stories," and then they go, "Oh, we like the songs too."
There you go. So this Tuesday at the Shea Center, and then two other shows in the area, May 9th in Tarrytown, New York, and then the Newton Theater here in New Jersey on May 17th. Roger McGuinn, has been great catching up with you, and best of luck with the show this week.
Okay, thank you, man. It's really fun talking to you.